This podcast is sponsored by FortuneFavours.ie. FortuneFavours.ie is a home workout equipment store and your one-stop shop for all home gym equipment. They are well known for their adjustable dumbbells, which combine 15 different weights in one dumbbell. They have both 24 kg and 40 kg adjustable dumbbells. Check the link in the bio of this episode for more information. So you're welcome back to a follow-on episode of the GAA Statsman podcast. Of course, this is the football preview for this weekend. To see the first weekend is already done, and we've seen teams progress in this weekend for this weekend's Allianz League fixtures. So it'll be interesting to see how they develop in the next week or so. So this episode is sponsored by FortuneFavours.ie. As usual, use the code STATSMAN11 all in caps, and you get 11% off the best home gym equipment around. So Aaron, enjoyable week in the football last week. Dublin obviously beating Kildare, not the best performances from yourself, but in terms of a neutral point of view, there were some interesting games last weekend. And when you look at the TV coverage, especially on RT last night with Peter Cavan and Lee Keegan coming into the panel, it's all looking on the up for football this season.
Yeah, it definitely is all right. And I think that the National League is nearly like a complete 180 from when we were speaking about the National Hurling League. I think the National Football League is the best competition the GAA has to offer, in my opinion, because it just logically makes so much sense. You've got all the same teams, or all teams in and around the similar level competing with each other, and it makes for great entertainment. Even when we were running through the games on Sunday night, or Monday, even looking at all the results, there wasn't too many games where it was one-sided, or there wasn't too many 10-15 point batterings. I think most games were within 2-3 points of each other, and I think that's what makes the league so exciting. And there's always surprises and shocks, and you never really know what's going to happen. And even when you get results like Laois beating Sligo, which we didn't expect in Division 4, or Dublin and Kildare going as close as it did, and Meath beating Cork, and even in Division 1, seeing Mayo and Galway go down to the wire. I think that's what makes the league so exciting. And I think it's, I was speaking with John McMahon there during the week, and we were even talking about all the fans coming back to games, and I just think there's a real appetite for the league. There probably isn't there for the provincial championships. There is in Ulster, but I think outside of that, there probably isn't.
Exactly. So, and some very interesting games, obviously, to look forward to this weekend. And we're starting off with Division 1, obviously, with Kerry against Monaghan at 1:30, and it's live at TG Carr from Fitzgerald Stadium in Killarney. This is kind of an interesting game because Kerry lost their first game against Donegal last Sunday. Monaghan also lost against Armagh. A lot of people thinking Kerry will walk this game, including myself, to be honest with you. But if Monaghan pull off a result in this game, it really will put the cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah, it definitely would be. I think it would be the biggest surprise of the league so far, and possibly of the season. And yeah, you look at it and think obviously Kerry don't have a lot of their big stars from last year, and no David Clifford, Sean O'Shea, Paulie Clifford, Paul Gainey, all unlikely to play. But as I said in my own show during the week in my own preview, how long do you leave it until you do bring those lads back in? Because realistically speaking, Kerry probably aren't going to get a significant test in the Munster Football Championship. Going into the group stages, I think they'll be paired up with the runners-up from the Connacht Championship, which could be Sligo, Leitrim or London. So you're looking at it and thinking Kerry mightn't get a big test, possibly until an All-Ireland quarter-final, potentially. So I think for the likes of those players, Clifford, Paulie Clifford, some of the other lads to come in as well, like Tom O'Sullivan and whatnot. I think you need those lads to get game time against top quality opposition, and that's why I think maybe it would be important for Jack O'Connor to introduce them sooner rather than later. And you don't want a scenario where you lose this game and then all of a sudden you're thinking, are Kerry in a relegation battle? But I think even with some of the sort of non-regular starters like Killian Spillane and Tony Brosnan, I think it's really about time really for these lads to step up and sort of stake their claim for this Kerry side, because they've been in and around on the fringes. Rory Murphy came off the bench the other day and scored a point. Could he be a man maybe to start? So I think for Jack O'Connor, it's about finding lads in there that can really sort of put their hands up and maybe come into the starting team, because look, Paul Gainey is getting on a bit. He's not going to be in the team forever. There is other young, older lads who are slowing down. So there's a potential there for someone like a Killian Spillane to put their hand up and be a starter for Kerry in the big game. So that's why I think it is a big game this for Kerry.
It is huge, all right. Like, if they lose this game, they could be in serious bother of going down. I know it's early stages and they're the All-Ireland champions for a reason. They're an unbelievable side, but like, it could be trouble signs for Kerry if they lose this game. And maybe Jack O'Connor's comments, like, what do you think of them after the Donegal game? Like, Paddy McBrearty, he was saying his point wasn't over the bar, the refs, cost them the game and things like that. It's the first game of the season. Kerry lost by a point without their main team on the field. Like, what do you think of Jack O'Connor's comments? Were they worthy?
Yeah, it just came across as a sore loser, really, didn't it? I think he wouldn't have made those comments if Kerry had won the game. I don't think. And I've seen that point back a couple of times, and even watched it back after he made those comments, and it's clearly over the bar. Like, it's clear, you know what I mean? Like, unless we get a different angle of it going wide, but yeah, like, I think he was just a bit of a sore loser. And in some ways, it's good to see, though. Like, I think from a Kerry fan, you'd be looking at it and thinking, you know what, that defeat hurt him, and it matters. And I think that's good to see, because it would have been very easy for Jack O'Connor to be like, oh, well, we don't have our best players available, and we're just about getting up to full fitness. And I was happy with how the lads performed, but you could see even in his interview, like, he's probably very annoyed with how some players played. And I think that's good to see, because you want other lads stepping up, you want other lads sort of making that step up. So I think in some ways, from a Kerry fan perspective, you nearly would have liked seeing those comments, but it probably did come across as a bit sour grapes a little bit. But look, we'll see how he goes on, and if Kerry lose any other games in this league.
And just a word of Rory Murphy there. I think he played the Sigerson Cup last night for UCC and scored 2 points. So he could definitely be a player that would perform for Kerry. Dylan Gainey scored a point as well. He could come into the team as well. Paul O'Shea has been on the panel, I think, for a couple of seasons now. So maybe he'll get a chance in the team. So yeah, some very good players coming through Kerry. And for Monaghan, like, a lot of people are predicting they'll go down, but against Armagh the other night, they only lost by 2 points. And there were some very good performances in Mihal Bannigan, particularly scoring 4 points, 3 from play. So, like, there is still positive signs for Monaghan, and they have survived in tricky situations before. So it's not really reason to panic yet, don't you think?
Yeah, it definitely isn't. Like, I mean, considering Jack McCarron went off injured, Conor McManus didn't feature as well. Like, they're probably two of Monaghan's best starters or best forwards, and I think getting Conor McCarthy into form, I think, has been a big thing. He scored 1-2 the last day, a goal and 2 points, and I remember seeing him with Scottstown. There's different times I've seen him with Monaghan, and he looked very, very good. I think he scored a hat trick one year, I remember, in a league game a couple of years ago, and he just hasn't consistently done it. So I think if you can get him consistently performing, we'll see how long Jack McCarron's going to be out now, and what the status is of his injury. Conor McManus, obviously, he is getting on a bit, so you'd imagine he's not going to feature too much in the league, probably more so in the championship. So, yeah, there were some positives there from a Monaghan perspective, but you would look at it and think Kerry and Killarney in their own backyard, with the fans really getting involved as well. Like, you could see Kerry winning this game, to be honest.
Yeah, it'd probably be a comfortable win. Wonders like Kerry are just very good players, even with the secondary team. Like Dara Roach is another player that has really stepped up in pre-season and against Donegal indeed. So yeah, I'd say Kerry should win this game pretty comfortably indeed. The next game in Division 1 is quite an interesting one. It's Galway against Roscommon, a Connacht derby, live in, well, it's not live, it's on in Salt Hill. It's not even shown on TV. Like, we're going over this discussion again. I remember we had this discussion last year where some brilliant games like this particular Connacht derby weren't even shown on live TV. So is there an argument that we should have something like a GAA Go platform or something like that so we can watch these brilliant games or not?
Yeah, like, they definitely should be all right. Like, I think they should, and when you seen the news that GAA Go were getting a lot more involved this year with the Sky deal going, you were thinking surely that's going to open things up, but there doesn't really seem to be any real extra games on GAA Go from what I've seen so far. Anyway, maybe in the championship there will be, but yeah, like, it is disappointing that there isn't games. Like, obviously 2 years ago when they were showing every game on GAA Go, it was brilliant from for I suppose ourselves to see games, to know how teams are playing and be able to actually talk about them and everything else. So yeah, like it's very disappointing, all right. Like, and I don't know what. Like, obviously they want fans to go to games and everything else, but I think for neutrals it would be great to watch that game, because it probably will be a cracker of a game, as Galway and Roscommon has been in the last couple of years.
Definitely will, and it's really shame it's not even shown on TV. Even to try and share. I know this is against the payroll or anything like that, but even to show it on live streaming for Galway GA or Roscommon GA or something like that, something a bit different. I don't know, the GA should even do that, but like, this is an interesting game. Galway drew the last day in another Connacht derby against Mayo. Roscommon with a brilliant victory over Tyrone, and a lot of people, including myself, on the JMAC podcast last week, actually called that. I think Seamus called it on my podcast as well. I talked him into it in a way, but like, Roscommon have some very good young players coming through. I was watching actually the under 20 final the other day. Ben O'Carroll was involved in that team. You have Dara Craig, you have Adam McDermott, who didn't even start the other day, and still he was absolutely brilliant as well. So yeah, like, Roscommon has good youngsters coming through, but Galway will be desperate for a win too.
Yeah, like, and like when you look at how strong Roscommon were against Tyrone and the body of work that they've done so far, as you said, like, the mix of experience and young players coming through is at the perfect time. And you then the Smith coming off, making a huge impact, setting up 2 goals. And as you said, Dara Craig looks very, very good. Adam McDermott still potentially to come in. So a lot of very, very good options up and down the field, from a Roscommon perspective. And it's a very hard game to call. Like, I'd nearly probably lean towards a draw here, to be honest with you. I think I said a draw on my own show, so maybe I'll stick with that. But I think it's going to be very, very close. It really could go either way, and I suppose maybe it's a bit unusual for Galway to start the league with 2 draws. But as we've seen with the Connacht sides, that there's not much to split between them down the years. And I suppose from a Galway perspective, like, there probably still won't be a Shane Walsh, until further down in the league. And obviously you still have the whole Kilmacud Croke situation going on there as well. So you don't really know what's going to be happening with him. But Tom O'Cohan playing, Matthew Tierney all playing Sigerson, and Tom O'Cohan obviously injured at the moment. So yeah, like, I think there's a big opportunity there for Roscommon to actually go to Galway and win. But like, Galway do have a lot of quality, and I do expect them to look even better than what they did on Saturday night. You know the way.
Exactly. Yeah, Robert Finnerty is another big loss. Like, yeah, even when he went off injured, he didn't play for DCU the other night either. So he's going to be a huge, huge loss for Galway. And yeah, it's an interesting scenario here, because like, if Galway do beat Mayo in the first round of Connacht, it'll be Roscommon and Galway in the Connacht semi-final. So I know there wasn't this particular aspect in the other night's game against Mayo for Galway, but do you think could be an element of shadow boxing in this game? Like, not giving their best up until a potential Connacht semi-final?
Yeah, I think that could be all right. Like, I think we see this in the Connacht Championship down the years, or we see this when league teams play each other in the Connacht Championship. And maybe in the Galway Mayo game, there was an element of two teams not wanting to give things away. But at the same time, like, the ferociousness of Galway and Mayo did surprise me for it being an opening day of the league. And although it was quite a scrappy game, like, it was end to end, and both sides really wanted to win the game. And I don't think it'll be any different here. Like, I think just to get that leg up on your rivals quite early on, and for Roscommon to put 2 wins on the board back to back, for Galway to get their first win. So although there might be an element of that, I still think both sides will really want to start strong and win this one. And that's why I think it will be a great game. And unfortunately, it's not on TV.
Exactly. So, and you're predicting a draw for this game. I think I'm going to tip Roscommon. This is going to be my bold shout. I just think, like, Galway are a good team, but I think they're not going to give too much away early on in the league, and they will progress, even further once it comes to championship time. But this Roscommon team, the young players, the exuberance, Davy Burke as manager, they've impressed me so far. Like, they impressed me against Tyrone the other day. I watched the highlights of the game, but still, like, the exuberance of these players. You look at Ben O'Carroll, Adam McDermott can't even get in the team. Dara Craig, outstanding for UCD and for Roscommon. You have the Murtaugh brothers as well, like Kieran Dermot. You have Enda Smith at centre forward. Like, the list is endless of brilliant players in this Roscommon team. So I think they'll have enough for this game, even if it's in Salt Hill. So should be interesting to see how it develops. The next game is kind of, I know Donegal won against Kerry, and deservedly so, but it has the feeling of an early relegation battle, and they are playing Tyrone. I think the game is on in Armagh, and indeed it is. It's on Healy Park at 2 o'clock on Sunday. So this is a huge game for Tyrone. If they lose this at home, there could be serious questions for Brian Dewar and Fergal Logan, not just after the aftermath of this game, but later on in the next few weeks.
Well, there could be, all right. Like, and I think Tyrone's next two games are Galway and Mayo. I think so. I mean, it's always tough getting points against Galway and Mayo, and I think both of those sides would love nothing more to sort of put the nail in the coffin and send Tyrone down. And yeah, like all just doesn't seem right there. Like there seems to be a lot of, I don't know what it is with Tyrone. Like, I mean, like Dara Canavan looked impressive, I felt, against Roscommon, but aside from that, when Darren McCurry came off the bench, he made a bit of an impact, but they're just not getting enough out of their players. And even some of their All-Ireland winners, like Conor Moyler, has been fairly quiet, hasn't really been, didn't do too much in the Roscommon game. Like Noel Sutton came off and scored a point, but, again, he hasn't really been making too much of an impact. Carl McShane obviously goes off, I think, at half-time with an injury. So, like, for Tyrone, I don't know what it is, and I've said it on other shows as well, like, I don't get why Rory Canavan isn't involved in some ways for this Tyrone side. So, yeah, look, in Donegal, like they'll have a lot of confidence and a lot of belief after beating Kerry, and Caleb McColgan very good at wing back, scoring 3 points. I think Paddy Carr, you could see even in his post match sort of interview, he was nearly a bit emotional with the victory. So, and Donegal have got a good record against Tyrone. So, to be honest with you, I fancy Donegal to beat them.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like Donegal did perform very well. Caleb McCall got 3 points for wing back, absolutely outstanding. Paddy McBrearty didn't do too well in the game, but when he stepped up at the clutch moment, he delivered with aplomb. Shane O'Donnell performed excellent the other day. There's still Oisin Gallen and players to come back. You've Niall O'Donnell, Ryan McHugh, I think, was on the bench the last day as well. So all of a sudden with this Donegal team, you look at them and you think, there's quality in this team. They played well against Kerry, albeit a second Kerry team, but still a very good victory. So, do you think people are kind of we've gone on about Kilkenny being wrote off in the hurling? Do you think Donegal are kind of being wrote off in the football?
They probably are to a certain extent. Like I think a lot of people had them as a side to go down, and I think if they win this weekend, then all of a sudden they're more than on their way to survival. Like they're 4 points on the board, and realistically, you probably need 6, 7 points most, really, and they probably need one, maybe two more wins, but one win after, if they win this weekend, should be enough. So they probably are a little bit, like, in terms of the new players that have come in, and I think that's testament to Paddy Carr, because like Donegal really at under 20 level or a minor level haven't done too much in the last couple of years, so there hasn't been a huge amount of players putting their names up to come in. So that's testament to Paddy Carr, Aidan O'Rourke, and the management there for actually seeing these lads, whether have been at club level or being able to spot this talent in the county and get them into the side. Like even Johnny McCroddy looked like it looks like a good talent as well. So yeah, like I think Donegal probably are a little bit better than maybe what we initially expected, but you could caveat that with the fact that Kerry did have a lot of their starting players missing. They were nowhere near their best. They probably underperformed on the day as well. So I think for Donegal, it's going to be about consistency, really, and when they go behind in matches, how do they respond? So yeah, there'll be a lot of interesting factors for Paddy Carr's men, but with some of those new lads coming in, they do look a lot stronger maybe than what we initially expected.
And I suppose Joel Bradley Walsh is another very interesting player as well, because he scored a hat trick against UL, I think, in the Sigerson Cup last year. He was on the bench against Kerry the other day. I'm excited to see if he gets on the panel. But I actually fancy Donegal to win this game as well. Like Tyrone, just a quick word on them. Like, what has happened literally with this Tyrone team? Like leading up to the McKenna Cup final, you were thinking, okay, they're making a recovery now, even with the players gone, like Paul Donaghy, Lee Brennan, Rory Brennan, all them. But then they lose to Derry pretty comprehensively. Then they lose to Roscommon, and there wasn't really a fight being laid on in that game either. So, like, where is this Tyrone team going? Is it another disaster this year coming?
Yeah, like as I was saying there, like I think it's hard to really put the nail on it. And obviously, we were chatting on Monday. Like I don't know where it has gone wrong. Like I mean, you think about it, this management delivered in All Ireland, so you think the players would want to work for these management. They'd want to try hard. They'd want to give 100% commitment week in, week out, because of the fact that these lads won an All Ireland or were in charge when we won the All Ireland. These lads might be able to bring us there again, and or whatever. So it is a strange one, all right. Like it's probably things going on behind the scenes that maybe we don't know about, or realistically what's happening there, we don't know. But there seems to be a lot of players on the fringes that don't want to play, that are happy not to play, and that is worrying. That is worrying, because then you're always one or two injuries away from, potentially not having a good replacement there. So a lot has gone wrong, but at the same time, like, this is a great opportunity to put it right. Like, I think a home win against Donegal, all of a sudden you drag Donegal back into a bit of a relegation scrap. You sort of put aside the what everyone's saying about you. And Tyrone always are at their best when everyone's doubting them. Like, realistically, like, they have that siege mentality. Like, even in the league last year, no one predicted them to be Mayo and Kerry towards the end, and they did, and stayed up miraculously. So it's a strange one with Tyrone. You never know quite what you're going to get. So you nearly wouldn't be too surprised if they did win. But I just think there's a lot of work for them to be done, and that's why I'd fancy Donegal.
Yeah, I'd fancy Donegal to win this game as well. Yeah, coincidentally, I actually predicted them to get relegated, but like, if they win 2 games now, they look very good. They look on the road to survival, definitely. This game, next game, is live on TG Car, and I am so excited for this game now, watching it live on TG Car on Sunday at 3:30. Armagh against Mayo on the Athletic Grounds. It's going to be a packed house, I'd say. Has to be. Like, two of the most travelled supporters all over the country. Like, I've seen Armagh and Croke Park last year firsthand, and like, against Galway, you could always see a sea of orange, and the Mayo supporters as well. So, like, for a league game in February, I think this is going to be absolutely an incredible atmosphere.
Yeah, like, and it's mad. You could nearly put this game in Croke Park and it would probably nearly sell out. It'd probably get 40, 50,000 there. Obviously you couldn't do that because there'd be uproar from both counties and everything else, and it wouldn't be fair. But like, you would be able to actually do that for this game, because that's how brilliant both of these two counties, their supporters are. So yeah, it's going to be a very fascinating game as well. Like, with Armagh and how well they looked in the opening weekend of the league. Well, I suppose they weren't perfect, and obviously still have a few lads maybe to come back in, like Greg McCabe and some of the Mackens and everything else. But yeah, like, it's a very hard one to call. Like, it could very well be another draw, to be honest. Like, you look at Mayo, and obviously Killian O'Connor coming off the bench, and Aidan O'Shea. Like, so there's a lot of very interesting parts to it, and yeah, it all looks set to be a very good game, and very excited to watch it.
That's your safe bet, is an hour and a draw.
Yeah, I think it's easy just to sit on the fence sometimes, and you don't really know, like, what you're gonna go. Like, I think on my own show I did predict Armagh to win, so maybe I'll edge towards Armagh. But yeah, like, well, to be fair, there was a lot of draws in the league though. I think there were 4 or 5 draws last weekend, so like, there is money on these draws. It's just about picking out the right games.
Exactly. So yeah, it's definitely a safe bet, especially for this type of game, because like, Armagh were so impressive last year, and even when they didn't perform particularly well on Saturday, but still went out of Castleblaney with the 2 points. In fairness to them, and Mayo, like, there's an edginess now about this Mayo team. Like, I looked at their defence. Conor Loftus at centre back seems to be working. Rory Brickenden there as well. Like, their kickouts seem to be in shape. Jack Coyne, I'm really impressed with him at cornerback as well. Like, you look at Ryan O'Donoghue and Killian O'Connor coming off the bench. So I don't want to be heightening the Mayo expectation or anything, because that's the last thing those group of fans need. But are we seeing potentially a new Mayo?
Yeah, like, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, to be fair, they've had a good crop of these players who've been sort of on the fringes. Like, Aidan Orme, when he first broke on the scene, looked like a phenomenal young talent, and was probably just a bit too raw around the edges last year. Jack Carney maybe similar. James Carr a couple of years ago burst on the scene with that incredible goal versus Galway. But a lot of these young lads have probably struggled for game time, and there's probably been an element of inconsistency there. But with the fact that there has been, Killian O'Connor's injury, Tommy Conroy's injury, Ryan O'Donoghue in and out of the side at times, there's opportunities there for other lads to put their hands up. And I think, Aidan O'Shea's come out of the side, Kevin McLaughlin's kind of more of an impact sub now. So there's a real opportunity there for other lads to put their, to really sort of put their hands up, and really come into the team. And, I've always said, I remember saying last year, I thought Mayo is a phenomenally brilliant squad, and probably one of the best squads for years, in terms of their starting 15 was very good, but then their bench was very good, which was something that Mayo always lacked. But what probably let them down big time last year was injuries, like not having Tommy Conroy, not having Ryan O'Donoghue for big championship games, I think was a big blow. So like to get those lads fit this year, like yeah, it's like Mayo are just a strange one. Like, you can never quite rule them out. Like I wouldn't be predicting them to win any All Irelands now or anything, but I think there's a feel good factor there from a Mayo perspective. And I think yeah, like I think Mayo are at home in this game, aren't they? So I think
It's
or are they
Armagh at
away?
home.
Armagh are at home.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, like I think from a Mayo perspective, like you could even see at McHale Park, like the kind of carnival atmosphere that was there. So, yeah, no, I think Mayo are trickling along pretty nicely at the moment.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like, but they're facing a very, very good Armagh team at the moment as well. Like Rian O'Neill coming back into form. You've Aidan Nugent, Tyrone Kelly, obviously, turning around his fortunes with that goal the other night. I know it was a Rory Began error, but at the same time, good for his confidence to get up. Stephen Campbell performed well the other night as well. They've scores all over the field. They the joint most scores out of any team in the Allianz League at the last weekend. So, like, everyone's chipping in for this Armagh team. And Kieran McGean, he seems to be sewing along nicely together.
Yeah, like I mean, and even the likes of Connor Turbot as well, and you Tiernan Kelly back, and he got a goal sort of at the weekend as well. So, like you do have a lot of moving parts, and it's very easy as supporters maybe when you're looking at a team to sort of focus on the big player, which would obviously be Rian O'Neill. But I think Armagh proved last year with Stephen Campbell, with Rory Grugan, that they have so much options, and they're the type of team now that we all expect it's time for them to kick on, and it really is. Like it's time for them really now to try and win an Ulster, compete for an Ulster, and get to a final at the bare minimum. So there probably is an expectation of pressure on Armagh for the championship, and for the league, with the fact that Kerry are being a little bit inconsistent, maybe there's an opportunity there to get to a league final. And I think if Armagh could bring home a league title, you can imagine the supporters in Croke Park. Like I think it would be huge for Armagh. It might maybe be the sort of first big step towards winning the Ulster title, or possibly even an All Ireland.
Exactly. So, like, Armagh, they need to win an Ulster this year. Like, it'll be big for them. Like, they haven't won an Ulster since 2008. I know we're like a broken record mentioning that, but like they badly need to win an Ulster this year, especially when the likes of Cavan have won it more recently than them. Like I'm thinking, Antrim got to an Ulster final more recently than Armagh. So it's kind of a very bad statistic for them. But for this game in particular, I'm so tempted now with a draw now, Aaron. You've just tempted me, but I'm going to go for Armagh. I just think the home advantage will just tip them over the line, and they've obviously some very good fans to get them going as well. So I'm just going to edge Armagh by a point in this game, and we move on to Division 2. We move on to Partalton with Meath against Clare at 2:00 on Sunday. Interesting game. Both sides won last weekend. Clare obviously with that last minute point from Jamie Malone. Meath impressive showing against Cork the last day, scoring 3 goals. Especially brilliant performance from Shane Walsh, scoring 1-7. So a chance for either side to start a promotion charge possibly.
Yeah, like and to be fair, I think a lot of us expected Clare to beat Loud, but I suppose like it is mad sort of how Meath's win against Cork. Like I think a lot of people were expecting them to be in and around the relegation battle, and it's mad how much one result can sort of change your opinion. But I suppose from a Meath perspective, if they were to get beat, in Navan in their own backyard by Clare, that would probably leave a bit of a feeling of okay, like we're not quite where we wanted to be. And it was as you saying, obviously, like with Cork, like they had the game probably wrapped up at one point. You felt like surely they're going to go on and win it, and they sort of just imploded really at the end with the Jordan Morris goal and Killian O'Sullivan being running straight through the middle. But one thing we've seen with Meath was that sort of bite that was back, and that I think was missing under Andy McAtee. Like you've seen them, the cynicism of challenges, bringing players down, being up for the fight. And that's something that Meath have lacked. And I think physically has been their big downfall. Like technically you can see they've good players and they've got great talent in Shane Walsh and Jordan Morris and, Cathal Hickey, Matthew Costello, these lads, and possibly some other younger players to break through in the next couple of years. But it's just been a case of physically they haven't been there. And I think coming up against Clare, like it will be very tough this. And, it might be another draw, to be honest with you.
It's the safe bet, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
geez, draw. Every game is going to be a draw. Yeah, yeah. This game could be a drawn out, jokes aside. Like it could be like Clare don't particularly have a good record against Meath. I was speaking to a Clare fella recently now, and yeah, he's nervous about this game. But for me, like yeah, I noticed that as well. The fight and the cynicism, like Colm O'Rourke has brought something into them, which kind of shocked me, really. Like considering their O'Byrne Cup performance, like they've struggled to beat Laois, they struggled to beat Carlow, they struggled badly against Longford as well. So, like the old Mead seems to be back. We were thinking the old Cork will be back, but it seemed in Park Cave last Sunday that we got the old Mead back instead.
Yeah, like we definitely did. Like I mean, the fight and determination, the tenacity was there. And a good thing from a Mead perspective, and especially if you're a Mead fan, was that when they were 3-4 points down, like they didn't implode themselves or they didn't panic, you know. And I think that was maybe something that happened under Andy McEntee, especially in his sort of latter years, where there was an element of panic there. So the fact that they kept their cool, kept ticking away, I think can only give Mead fans confidence, really. But obviously Clare beat them in the championship last year, so a great opportunity to right the wrong. And like, if I was to pick someone, I would edge towards Mead, to be honest. The fact that Clare maybe got out of jail a little bit against Louth as well, like they scored 4 points in injury time, and from speaking to Louth fans and hearing Louth fans, a lot of them not happy with the amount of additional time that went on. So, maybe Clare weren't fully up to, the levels against Louth, or maybe that's credit to Louth. But I think I would edge towards me, but at the same time, a draw could happen here. And again, with me, they have been a very inconsistent team, and until they build a consistent run of results, you don't really know what you're going to get with them.
Yeah, I'd probably back Mead in this game as well. Like, they have to, follow up with a good win at Park Talton. But before we leave this game, like, your comments about Clare there, struggling against Lowe. But what I was hearing from Clare fans in particular, you were speaking to Lowe fans, I was speaking to some Clare fans, and they were saying that the side showed grit and determination in that game. It might not have been pretty, but they won. They got 4 points in the end, and
Mhm.
they just were in a battle and they fought to the end. And Clare didn't play particularly well, but they still won the game at the end. Does that kind of show a sign of a good team in a way too?
Yeah, it probably does at the same time. Like, it probably, like the fact that they were 4 points down in injury time, there's not too many teams probably other than Clare that can pull that round. And how many times, like Roscommon was the perfect example in the All Ireland quarterfinals, where 5 points down going into the final couple of minutes and they drag it back and win the game. They're just that type of team that you can, they have that never say die attitude that, Colm Collins has really built into them. And it's probably why they've done as well as they have in Division Two. Like, they probably don't technically there's some great players in Owen Cleary and David Tuberty down the years, but they've a lot of workhorse forwards, they've a lot of very strong midfielders who are great at fielding the ball, but they probably don't have the skill levels of even a Mead, for example, in some of their in their team. But physically, they're just such a tough team to beat. And even last year in a lot of their games, they're always very close. They're not comfortably beaten. So that's why you do have to give a lot of credit to Clare as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It should be a very interesting game up in Park Talton on Sunday, and on at the same time on Sunday in Newbridge, just down the road, is Kildare against Cork. Both sides after losing their first game, but Kildare will feel kind of hard done by losing Croke Park to Dublin, like you said on your channel, and I said it as well. That Kildare will come out of the game quite disappointed that they didn't beat Dublin for the first time in Croke Park since 2000. Whereas Cork were just a mess defensively in the last 20 minutes, especially against Meath. Some people are telling Cork fans not to panic, and it was just Meath were decent on the day. But a lot of Cork fans are very unhappy with their performance the last day. But how do you think this game will go? Obviously, Kildare had a very good record in Division 1, especially in Newbridge last season, drawing against Kerry, beating Dublin, beating Monaghan quite comprehensively. So it's a very hard place for Cork to get a few points on the board.
Yeah, like, and as we were saying before, I mean, playing Kildare and Dublin in your next two games, I mean, if you don't pick Anton up there, like, it'll be tough, to all of a sudden you are possibly in a relegation scrap. So yeah, like, it's a hard one, all right, because again, like, maybe a bit like me, both of these two sides have been very inconsistent, and Cork have maybe pulled out results when we haven't expected them to, and seeing them go to Kildare and win probably wouldn't be that big of a surprise. But at the same time, you look at Kildare and the body of work that Glenn Ryan has done since he's come in as manager. I mean, obviously Division 1 last year. They were very unlucky to go down, won 2 games, drew with Kerry, beat Dublin, and obviously the Leinster didn't go too well, but competitive enough against Mayo in the qualifiers, and against Dublin last year. I think they should have beat them. So I think it would be a massively big backward step if Kildare didn't win this. So I think they need to be on the front foot, need to get ball into Jimmy Hoyland. Jack Robinson looked outstanding the last day as well. So I would edge towards Kildare, but I do think you will see a better Cork performance, and it wouldn't surprise me if they set up a bit like how they set up against Dublin and Kerry in this one, where they were very defensive and got a lot of men behind the ball, and then tried to frustrate Kildare. Well, it'll be interesting to see nonetheless.
Like, a lot of people have been going on about Cork in general, some fans up the country, and then some fans on your channel are saying that, well, you probably have seen my rant on your channel now, to anybody viewing this now, but yeah, I like, do I regret any of that? Probably not. Looking back at it, I thought it'd be terrible doing it live, but like, looking back at it, I think there were kind of fair comments about the team. I think we were a shambles defensively, but a lot of people are saying, look, I shouldn't overreact. Look, Cork actually performed well. But what was interesting, a Meath fan actually mentioned to one person I know up in Westmeath actually, that Meath just got the goals and Cork didn't. That was the difference between the teams, and Meath were on a good day, and you shouldn't panic. Like, a lot of people are saying we shouldn't panic over this. Do you think there's time to panic for Cork fans over this, or do you think my reaction on your channel, for example, was an overreaction?
Yeah, like, I don't think it was an overreaction, to be honest. I think maybe there isn't time to panic because it is the first game of the league, but I do think there are a lot of worrying signs there. Like, you could look at the scoreline and say, well, Cork finished with 19 points. If you finish with 19 points, in the league, you win your majority of the league games you play, but I think 11 of them were frees from Stephen Sherlock, So, I mean, realistically, you scored, what, 9 points from play?
Yeah.
In 8 points from play. So, I mean, that's the real sort of statistic to look at there, and that really points that out. And then conceding 3 goals, like, against me, like, it's not like you're conceding 3 goals to Kerry, Dublin, Derry, one of the top teams in the country. Like, and Meath were probably there for the taking that day as well. Like, they Meath still have a lot of improvement to do, and I think there was a chance for Cork to put the nail in the coffin and beat them. So, no, like, if I was a Cork fan, I'd be very disappointed. Like, and I think there probably isn't room to panic. But when you look at the next 2 games, I think the main thing for Cork really is, even if they lose the next 2 games, just give a performance. Like, just be there, be competitive, stick with them. I think the last thing they need is, beaten by Kildare by 4 or 5 points, conceding 2 goals, and then get hammered by Dublin, because then all of a sudden things are looking very grim. And I remember last year, Dublin fans kept saying to me, "Don't panic, don't panic." But before you know it, like, the defeats rack up. So every result counts.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what work will be done in the training ground with Kevin Walsh, etc. Like, a lot of them are playing Sigurdsson Cup during the week. Cathal O'Mahony scored a brilliant goal, and one of the things I actually mentioned on your channel, that with no players to break the lines. Coincidentally enough, Cathal O'Mahony did that in the first minute of the UCC game against against St Mary's in the quarter final, and he got a goal off it. That's what I mean. Just breaking the lines. That probably he's a guy that should start now on Sunday. I know he played on the Wednesday, but like, he's an incredible talent to just leave out of the team.
Yeah, he is. Like, and that seems to be the problem with Cork. Maybe is that they don't. There's been a lot of good young players, young talents, kind of in and around the fringes, but haven't quite made the breakthrough, or maybe haven't been trusted by management to come in and be consistent players in the side. And likes of Conor Corbett, Mark Cronin, Mark Cronin in particular has looked very good with Nemo Rangers, but just hasn't really been able to cement a place in the Cork side. So, there's plenty of great players in the country, but for whatever reason, Cork just can't quite seem to blend them all together.
Exactly. So, and as for a prediction for this game, I'd probably just say Kildare would win it by 5 or 6 points. I think it doesn't look pretty for Cork at the moment, and it's going to get worse this weekend, I'd imagine. The next game is between Louth and Derry and RD. I think Derry are well set for this game, scoring 16 points and conceding 4 against Limerick the last day. pretty good showing, albeit it was against Limerick, but pretty good showing all the same for Derry. Louth, very unlucky to miss out on a win against Clare. A lot of their fans, as you mentioned earlier, Aaron, complaining about the time on the clock against Clare. And will that give Louth a bit more bite to them after that game against Clare? I know a lot of people are saying that Clare deserve to win the game, especially Clare fans I've been speaking to, but considering the amount of what Louth fans are describing as overtime in that game, do you think there'll be a bit of fire in the belly for these Louth players?
I think there probably will. Like, I think that there definitely will be some confidence taken to the fact that they nearly beat Clare, who are a very sort of consistent Division Two side. And there'll be a lot of learnings there. And I'm sure Mickey Hart will be looking at those points you conceded in injury time. And I'm sure you can look at officials and blame everything else, but ultimately they conceded 4 points, so they had more than enough of a lead there to hang on. It wasn't like they conceded a late goal or anything. So I think that there'll be a lot for Louth to work on, but I think realistically, like, you look at how strong Derry have even gone in the league, like starting Conor Glass and bringing back the Dohertys and everything else, and Emma Bradley back now as well. So, like, I think Derry, like, this should be a fairly comprehensive victory for them.
Probably should, yeah. I'd probably go for Derry in this game as well. And Derry look very good at the moment. Like, they're Ulster champions, obviously, All Ireland semi finalists, won the McKenna Cup, and you have Conor Glass and all them Glen lads coming back into the team as well. Rory Gallagher's well set for this season. So, like, Derry are going to have a very good year.
I think so, yeah. Like, I mean, the only worry is, if there's a burnout there. I mean, obviously Rory Gallagher knows his players and he knows them inside and out, but like, you probably didn't need to start Conor Glass last week. You still would have won the game. You could reckon he probably needs a rest, after the All Ireland Club final, and there might be another All Ireland Club final on the horizon as well. So, you kind of look at it and think, realistically, you didn't need to start out those. That's the only kind of worry, is that could this come back to bite Derry further down the line? But Rory Gallagher knows his players inside and out, and I think he's spoken very openly about his team needs to get out of Division Two. I think they will, and Louth will be a lot better defensively than what Limerick were, and they'll really try and frustrate Derry. And this could be a bit of a low scoring game, but you'd fancy, with Derry's quality, with the fact that Louth really haven't played too many teams of this quality as well, this could be maybe a bit of a reality check for Louth. And I think for Derry that they should win by, I'd say, 7 or 8 points.
Yeah, I'd probably have to agree. I know Louth will be pretty sound defensively, but this Derry team is on a crest of a wave at the moment. And the final game of Division 2 is on at 3 o'clock down the Gaelic grounds. No, it's not hurling. It is football between Limerick and Dublin in Division 2. I don't think we really need to explain the rationale behind our predictions for this game, because the outcome will be so obvious. But, like, what will Dublin actually learn from this game? Because I think that's the main question here, because I think Limerick could be well out of their depth in this game. I know Limerick have made great strides under Billy Lee last season, and Ray Dempsey's brought in a bit of a steely determination in a way to Limerick. But Dublin should cruise on.
They definitely should, yeah. Like, and I think, it will be interesting to see what type of team Desi Farrell puts out for this. Like, does he go with, some under 20 lads and maybe mix it up even more, and, maybe no Conor O'Callaghan or whatever? Does he sort of really try and rotate the squad quite a bit, or does he go strong? And you'd imagine there will be a balance of the two. But I think the main thing from a Dublin perspective is the performance here, because I think we all know that realistically, I think even if we play poorly, we'll probably win this game. That's just the nature of, as you said, like, Limerick, aren't that strong of a side, and we should be beating them comfortably regardless, really. But I think the performance is important here, and I think going out, like, we all know score difference can play a big part in the National Football League. And how many times down the years have we seen teams miss out of promotion and get relegated due to score difference? So you've seen Derry rack up a 14-point victory or 12-point victory over Limerick. I mean, that could stand to them. That could really stand to them going down the war. And I think for Dublin, they should be looking at this similar as well, and thinking we need to put up a 10, 15-point victory, and really, lay down the marker. And I suppose Conor O'Callaghan looked rusty in the first half versus Kildare. So you look at it and think he needs game time. Like, he needs to be playing so he can get himself ready for when the championship comes around. And then, could Jack McCaffrey is going to have to start playing eventually as well, because we need him to get up to full fitness. And, other young lads, like surprised like Conor McHugh hasn't really been too involved so far. Would have liked to see him maybe get a run out. Patter O'Cuff with Byrne maybe as well. You know, like, and could there be room for maybe some Crokes lads to come into the side? I mean, that'd be interesting as well. We're all sort of expecting them to come in, but no, I'd fancy Dublin to win comfortably enough.
And I don't think that needs any explanation. I think Dublin could even win 10 plus points. I know I've praised Limerick and I want Limerick to do well, but yeah, this is a step above, clearly. We're moving on to Division 3, and obviously the same as with Seamus Brady last week, we're going to pick 2 games to talk in detail and 2 games just to pick a word. And the first game we're going to pick a word is Down against Antrim on at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening in Park Esler. Like, Down won last weekend, Antrim lost last weekend. I think I know what you're going to say here.
Yeah, I think down all day long.
Yeah, same. I'm going to go for Down pretty comfortably. The next game we're going to talk in detail because it's Cavan against Tipperary. Obviously, both sides won provincial titles at the same time in 2020. Both sides got promoted, so they're in a similar trajectory here. But you have the feeling Cavan, after winning last weekend in a tough game against Westmeath away from home, Tipperary losing to Down at home, I think Cavan are going to win this game. Do you think it'll be easy for Cavan, or do you think Tip will put up a good showing? And mentioned as well, Connor Sweeney's out with an ACL injury, so that's a huge loss for Tip.
Yeah, I think that's the big news really sort of gone into this fixture. I mean, Connor Sweeney's been, you know, Tipperary's best player, probably one of their best ever footballers, if not their best, you know, if not the best footballer to ever play for Tipperary. So like, not to have him now is huge. I think most people were predicting Tipperary to go down even without Sweeney or even with Sweeney. So now not to have him is a huge blow. But look, it's a chance for other lads to step up. I mean, Tipperary have given Cavan a game here and there, nearly beat them in the league final last year, beat them actually in the league stage last year, like in a regular league game in Division 4 last year. So they have got a couple of good victories against Cavan, but you would expect Cavan to get the victory when they started the league quite strong. Darragh McVeety playing at centre back is an interesting one. Still have Paddy Lynch to come back in as well, Grove McKernan. So and Cavan are fairly strong defensively, like with Padraig Faulkner and Raymond Galligan. They have 2 solid players there at the back and Galligan between the sticks. So yeah, no, I'd fancy Cavan here all day long.
Yeah, I'd have to go for Cavan as well. Like, Tip could even have a tough year, I think. When you look at their Munster side, the draw as well, playing Kerry, it doesn't look good for David Power and his team. The next game we're going to talk in a bit detail as well. Offaly against Fermanagh on Glen Isk, O'Connor Park. Tullamore at 2 o'clock. Like, this is an interesting game. Both sides after winning last weekend, Offaly beating Antrim away from home. Fermanagh winning at home to Longford. A pretty good win, actually, 15 points to 8. So, yeah, it should be a tight encounter, this.
Yeah, it definitely should be all right. Like, and I think from a Fermanagh perspective, like to have got that victory and got that win, like it was another one of them wins, maybe a bit like me beating Cork, where it sort of made you double check your screen or double check the score, and you're kind of thinking, wow, like I definitely didn't see that coming. And Fermanagh are one of those teams, like in their own backyard, they're just so hard to beat. Like whether they're playing at Brewster Park or at Derny as it was, and Sean Quigley is just such a huge asset for this Fermanagh side. But like they've had a few young players on the fringes for the last couple of years, like Conor Love and Darragh McGurn, and you know it's good to see them now sort of making the step up and coming into this team. And I suppose from an Offaly perspective, like, you know, it's looking like they won't have Noel McNamee this year, but a lot of good players coming through there. And I think for Liam Kearns, it is about just putting the pieces of the jigsaw together a little bit. And it might take time and there might be bumps. It is a hard one to call, but I probably would lean towards Offaly still. You know, I think they're still a better side. And, you know, I think maybe Longford were a little bit, you know, maybe we were giving them too much credit and maybe where they're actually at. But I think Offaly, Anton Sullivan, who looked good the last day, Dylan Hoyland, I think scored 4 points. So no, I'd fancy Offaly here.
Yeah, I'd probably have to go for Offaly as well. Yeah, when you think about it, Offaly after winning 2 games, if they win this, of course, 4 points on the board, like that's pretty good for Offaly, and good form and good times are coming for Offaly with Liam Kearns in charge. Very good manager, obviously got Tipperary to the All-Ireland semi-finals in 2016, and the final game of Division 3, just a word on this, Longford against Westmeath, obviously rivals, they lost last weekend, but who do you think will win this game?
Yeah, like I'd go with Westmeath here. I think, yeah, with Longford, just I'm not too sure what happened to them last week, and you know I think there's a good bit of work to be done. I mean, Westmeath are a strange one, all right. I was particularly disappointed with how they played against Longford or against Cavan. But I think for Westmeath, with the players that they have, they should be winning this.
They should be. I think Westmeath should ease the victory in this game. Like losing to Cavan, that was bad enough last weekend. If they lose twice, that'll be pretty bad for Westmeath for their promotion charge. We move on to Division 4 finally, and Saturday night, Waterford against Carlow live at SETU Arena in Carrick and Nor, I think is the place, at 5 p.m. on Saturday. A quick word on this, who'll win it?
I think Carlo, yeah, and I think most football fans, knowledgeable GAA fans will know why. But look, if Waterford were to win a game, you'd maybe look at this as one of those potential games. But at the same time, Carlo looked good against Wicklow, like scored 210, and Dara Foley, Colin Hutton still to come back in, like he came off the bench. So yeah, I'd fancy Carlo.
Yeah, exactly. Jordan Morrissey, another good performer, got on team of the week and deservedly so as well. London against Leitrim. Obviously, London actually went over to Leitrim, well, not Leitrim, to the Connacht GAA Centre of Excellence last year and beat Leitrim. So they're at home this time in Ruislip at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Who do you think will win this game? Like Leitrim putting up 318, the highest scores last weekend.
Yeah, look, I'd lean towards Leitrim, but I'm curious to see how good this London side are, because there's been a lot of people in my own videos, and maybe you've seen a few comments maybe on your Instagram as well, where a lot of people are saying like London are onto something with Enda Lynn coming in as well. Very well known ex-GAA player. Like, so there's a lot of good players kind of coming, like Matthew Walsh who scored a late goal the last day. So they have a good base of players there. I'd edge towards Leitrim, but I wouldn't surprise me if London pulled off something here.
Yeah, exactly. I'd probably go Leitrim, but again, London, it should be very interesting to see how they develop this season, especially after performing well in Division 4 last season. Laois against Wexford, Leinster Derby in this game. Laois winning last weekend. Wexford obviously drawing at the death to London after London scoring 1-1 in additional time. But Laois, after beating Sligo, you have to expect Laois will win this game, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think Wexford. There's just the result speaks for itself against London. Like how many times did they get that result? I mean, Wexford are the type of team that could actually go to Laois and beat them, but then lose to Waterford next weekend. That's kind of how it's just been for Wexford in the last couple of years. They're just such a hard team to predict. But I think for Laois, I still expect there to be inconsistencies there, but I think getting that result versus Sligo, you go out now and beat Wexford firmly in a promotion race, in my opinion. So I go for Laois.
Absolutely, yeah. And Laois might be on the way back under Billy Sheehan. And the final game, we're talking a bit of detail about this. Wicklow against Sligo on an Ockram at 2 o'clock. Oisin McConville's first competitive home game as Wicklow manager. Sligo, after losing last weekend, after a load of people, including yourself and myself, predicting him to ease past this division. So this is a big game for Sligo.
It is. It's a huge game for them, and two defeats, like promotion all of a sudden is becoming very tough. Like, I do think this division will be a bit mental, and you might have 4 or 5 teams maybe in with a chance of promotion on the final day. So there's still plenty of time for Sligo to iron things out. But I think when you looked at the under-20 success, you looked at the young players coming through, the talent levels of Noel Murphy, Sean Carabine, and how well organised Tony McEntee has his side. It's interesting to see them get beat to Laois, and it's a huge game for either side, I think, as well, because I think Wicklow are another team people are looking at to possibly be thereabouts, and that's 2 games then without a win for Oisin McConville. So you nearly get the feeling that this is almost like a bit of a cup game in some ways, where whoever loses this all of a sudden has a lot more work to do. So it's a very tough one to call, but I'd nearly lean towards Sligo just to edge it, but this could be also a draw as well.
It could be, yeah. I know what you mentioned. It's like Leitrim, if we predicted to win as well, we could have a situation where Leitrim and Laois both are on 4 points, and that could be the promotion race done already if these sides draw. So it should be very interesting. So yeah, very interesting weekend in store, the Allianz Football League. Thank you, Aaron, for joining in the last 2 videos of this. And yeah, I suppose people know where we could find you, but just to remind us all, YouTube, Instagram.
Yeah, they can find me if they search GAA Fan TV on YouTube. They'll be able to find me there. Same on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, on there as well. So yeah, if anyone searches that in, just come along, subscribe, and check everything out.
Ideal. So, that's the end of another episode of the GAA Statsman podcast. Thank you all for listening or viewing on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, subscribe, do everything. Follow on Instagram, follow on Twitter. Thank you to Fortune Favours for sponsoring the show once again. And until next time, I'll see you then and take care.